brutally exposed.
Nonetheless, I suppose, we've seen with the FIFA scandal the erosion of support from sponsors, the threatened pullout of sponsors. That presumably is now a huge threat to the Olympic movement.
I think sponsors will be nervous about this. I'm sure they will be looking very cautiously at how this is going to play out. There is a showdown now looming between the IAAF, the world governing body, and Russia. And Russia's economic might in all this can't be underestimated. It is one of the world's leading players when it comes to global sport. It has spent $51 billion on staging the Sochi Olympics in 2014. It hosted the World Swimming Championships in Kazan recently. It is hosting, of course, the next FIFA Football World Cup. In addition to that, it is offered unalloyed support to lots of national associations. It is spending a lot of money in terms of sport, and that buys it influence, that buys it power. You know, who was the first person to call Thomas Bach the president of the IOC when he was elected? Well, it was Vladimir Putin. Putin has positioned himself in Russia at the center of the sporting world. So sponsors will be looking on this urgently, but I think lots of sporting bodies as well. Russia is an economic powerhouse.
We saw with the banking crisis the problems of oversight when it came to things like LIBOR and other trading scandals. Do you think there's a question about the oversight process?
It comes down to the essential reason for why sporting bodies exist. Is it that they are the guardians of the sport, or is it that they are there to be commercial bodies chasing sponsorship, chasing money in order to buttress and support their chosen sport? That is something that is leading to clashes of governance, is leading to clashes of the way that they regulate themselves. We've seen it with FIFA. We're now seeing it with the IAAF. What do these governing bodies exist for? That is the essential question that they need to answer, not only within athletics and football, but I think lots of other sports now too.
Richard Conway. You're listening to Business Daily from the BBC with Ed Butler. Now, perhaps the thing that most people know about the Philippines is that it's really unlucky with its weather. Almost exactly 2 years after Super Typhoon Haiyan caused global headlines, another storm, Typhoon Kopu, has struck. As it moved slowly over the island archipelago last month, the rain came in torrents onto high ground in the north before pouring down into the lower-lying farmlands, devastating huge areas. The BBC's Fergus Nichol travelled around 110 kilometres north of Manila to the region of Nueva Ecija, one of the areas hardest hit. Fergus Nichol in the Philippines. He joins me now. Terrible challenges obviously facing these farmers, Fergus. And storms like this, I mean, are they telling you they're becoming an ever more regular threat?
Certainly the severity seems to be increasing, Ed. We hear from the experts at the Philippines National Weather Authority. There's an annual average of 22 typhoons, believe it or not, usually of varying intensity, but the two most recently have made global headlines. We heard, of course, about Super Typhoon Haiyan. That was 2 years ago, almost exactly. It's called Yolanda here in the Philippines, and they had a memorial service the other day for the people there. And there was a feeling there that there is a fear of much worse to come, because just 3 weeks ago came the follow-up, so to speak, Typhoon Kopu, known here as Lando, and all the experts are telling us every storm appears to get a little bit stronger, the rain is heavier, and that means they have to worry about the dams holding and the riverbanks not bursting.
Right, and so it's obviously a tragedy, as we heard, for those individuals who've lost their crops. Is there any way of measuring, overall the scale of the damage for the Philippines? I mean, it must be a huge economic toll each time.
It is a huge economic toll. For example, just one storm, Yolanda, as I mentioned, wiped off 2.5% of annual GDP. Now, when you look at it, it looks regional. It hit primarily Tacloban. And of course, those were the worst affected families and businesses. But there is inevitably a knock-on effect across the country. The area that you just heard my report from, a little bit north of Manila, in Nueva Ecija, again, it feels very regional, but that is a rice crop that serves the nation. And the Philippines now has to buy in rice to make up for the crop that's going to suffer potentially a 70% shortfall.
We're going to be hearing about other low-lying Pacific nations later this week on Business Daily, specifically Tonga. Is it now a case of the Philippines finding common cause, do you think, with these other poor, low-lying island nations? When it comes to the political agenda, after all, we've got the Paris summit in a month's time. Is this becoming more of a political cause for the nation, do you think?
Absolutely. And Paris, you can expect the Philippine delegation to be extremely forceful. They're already saying, look, we are the third most affected nation in the world by climate change. They're talking directly, of course, about these devastating storms that hit every couple of years and potentially with greater frequency. So, yes, they are saying we need to get together with other nations who are similarly affected. I spoke to the head of the Red Cross, the guy who's at the sharp end dealing with these family crises, business crises on a huge scale. They're already rebuilding homes, but they can't be sure that the homes aren't going to be hit again. But he says, look, climate change is real. Climate change is hitting the Philippines. It's not sloganeering. He said, I hate phrases like the new normal, but everybody here assumes it is the new normal, and they need allies on the international stage to fight the Filipino corner, so to speak, and persuade bigger countries, more developed countries, to make the sacrifices necessary to cut back on the greenhouse gases that cause global warming.
Well, now let's hear that report from Fergus.